Welcome to What's Important to You, a podcast about purpose, passion, and the things that truly matter. I'm James Dean, life coach and host, and each week I sit down with inspiring guests from all walks of life and ask one powerful question: what's important to you? Their stories will spark reflection, fuel your goals, and remind you what really matters, so you can move forward with clarity and momentum. In today's episode, I'm joined by a physical and mental health coach whose work focuses on the powerful connection between the body and the mind. Originally from Budapest, now based in Ireland, she brings a deep and compassionate understanding to the challenges many people face after navigating trauma, toxic relationships, or complex family dynamics. Alongside her work in coaching, she's a qualified trauma therapy practitioner and is currently studying advanced psychology, with a focus on human behaviour, personality traits, and emotional resilience. Her mission is to help women reclaim their voice, set healthy boundaries, and reconnect their true selves through movement, mindset, and self-awareness. Today, we find out what's important to Zsanett Lásár. Hi, Zsanett. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really looking forward to this and delighted you're joining me today. So we're going to go straight into it, which is, Zsanett, the first question as always is, what's important to you?
Okay, well, many things. Probably the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear this question is just being authentic. And also flexible mindset. I really love talking about the flexible mindset because I think it's highly influencing everything that we do in our life. So that's very important to me. And it's very important, not just for me for practicing it, but also to help other people to improve having a flexible mindset and being authentic and just trying to be themselves. So that's very important for me as well in every situation, to just kind of, finding my own voice and being me.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you couple that with flexibility because I don't know, but because sometimes I could think people think being authentic is being the same thing all the time. So it's interesting that you've paired it, being authentic, with also being flexible. So tell me how those two things almost coexist.
Yes, it's a very good question. And I didn't think about it yet, that most people think that if you're authentic, you kind of being the same way because you stick to that.
Yeah.
I think it's the complete opposite from my experience, not just from my life, but from other people's life, family, friends, and clients and everything. So I think the more flexible you are in your mindset, which means that you can adapt to different situations. Sometimes you cannot control everything around you that happens. You can make plans. You can control certain things that are important, yes, but you cannot control everything. So you have to be flexible with your mindset when things don't go the way you want them to go. And if you can do that, and if you can try new things, if you can experience new situations without trying to control everything, I think that's when you actually learn about yourself. And that's how you can be authentic. If you try to be always just one way, and it's kind of like my way or the highway, yeah, is that how we say it? Yes, my way or the highway thing. I don't think you are authentic that way. I think it comes from fear. If you're really kind of avoiding being flexible or just stepping out of the normal, usual things that you are or you do, I think it's usually from fear. That's what I see. So I think that's why there's a connection. The more flexible you are in your thinking, the more you find yourself and learn about yourself, so then you can be authentic and find what your basic value is that you don't want to change in. Because there's certain things you actually want to stick to and you don't want to change. But otherwise it's important to just, just to be open.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you said there about the thing of having that sort of flexible mindset, you said it for yourself and for the people you work with. So I'd love to know first about what about talk about yourself first in a sense of how do you think that you've benefited from having that sort of flexible mindset?
Oh, so many ways. So the first thing for me is when I moved abroad, I really had to just learn everything from start. When you move abroad, you start really from zero, because it's everywhere you go, it's a different culture. So for me, when I moved abroad, when I moved to Ireland, although it's in Europe, because I'm also from Europe, so it's not like a completely different culture, but still it's so different. So adapting to the mindset, the different mentality, the language. English is my second language, and the way you think in English. So being open and being flexible with, okay, things are not going to go the way I'm used to do things, because it's a different country. So, it's hard, but it's like step by step. So from my point of view, what I did, I tried to stay as flexible as I could. So I knew that I couldn't say certain things, that I couldn't keep certain traditions because I didn't have the resources for that, or people around me for that. And also, I think it helped me a lot in learning in another language, not just the language itself, but learning psychology and other studies in another language, just meeting new people and just adapting that mindset where wherever I go, it doesn't matter where I am in the world. Even if something happens that don't go my way that I planned, I can kind of stop and not panic and say, all right, there are people around me. I can talk to people. I can sort it out, and it will be fine. So I think it helped me in every situation, to be honest, in everything. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting because I think I've mentioned this mentioned a few times. Obviously, because I've moved to Ireland myself. I'm not originally from Ireland myself, but I've been here 20 years now, and it's even obviously I didn't have the challenge and sense of obviously learning English as a second language. But it's funny though, even just the difference of conversations and how people talk in Ireland is different from again where I would have grown up in sort of my background. So it's I think the way you put it there is not expecting things to go the way that you maybe wanted or think they will go, and how you adapt to those situations as they present themselves. And it kind of goes back to some of your previous points about what you can't control, and just having that ability to go with the flow as such in those situations. Very good. So if that's about how it affected yourself, how do you promote a flexible mindset with those people?
Yeah, so when I'm working with people, first of all, just a little bit about that. Years ago, I started only with the physical health part, but then I slowly developed and improved, and I kind of combined the body-mind connection, and I started studying psychology and mental health. And so I'm dealing with not just, like one certain situation when it comes to people, but sometimes relationships, family situationships, or just health, mental health in general. So the way I try to help with this flexible mindset is giving them real practical step-by-step guidance. So it's not just, talking about it, because of course listening is very important. A lot of people only need someone, to listen to them, but also to show them that even with very small steps, they can make a difference in their day. And then day after day, they can try another step. And so for a lot of people, it can be as small as a phone call. For example, if they don't feel comfortable making a phone call, or if they don't feel comfortable going to a different shop or a different bar because they have their habit, but they know that it's actually holding them back and they want to try something new. So it can be really something small, but that can make a very big difference in the long term. So that's kind of the step-by-step thing that I try to make, and starting with something that's not very, extreme or very like a big step, because that can be too scary for some people. So I'm trying to help with that, to be practical about that. And then when we get through that, it can develop into even more. Yeah.
So tell me more in the sense of how you got into what you're doing now in sense of helping people. Where was the origin of it?
Okay. Well, it started a long time ago. I think even when I was a child, as far as I can remember, and my family can always tell me that when I was in kindergarten, I had a little kind of corner for myself where I pretended that I'm talking to the other children and asking them about what they like and about their favorite color and their day, and that's a kind of a thing that I don't know how it came. It just started very early as a playtime activity for me, but it kind of stayed with me all through my life. So first, I studied sports science, and I'm still into sports. I love doing any sports, but I was trying to help people get healthier. And then I started my psychology studies, and I kind of combined the two because I think it's very important, because every time I had a client with some health issue, or they wanted to put on weight or lose weight, it always came to the same conclusion, that there is a mental health problem base there, or something that's in their life going on. What I mean by that. And so I got into that more, and then I got my trauma therapy practitioner coaching certificate, and that's even deeper, how you experience trauma, how your body keeps the trauma, and how you can actually deal with that and get out of, for example, also toxic environments, toxic family system and relationships, how they are causing trauma, how you can actually deal with that when you are in it, and how you can get out if you can or want to get out, because not everyone can. So it's years and years. It's years of studies. It's probably more than 10 years of just constantly improving in this.
Yeah, fascinating. No, because I would absolutely echo and share in relation to someone coming for you from the fitness, initially sports background, health, fitness, that sort of more physicality approach, as you say, whether it be to lose weight, put on weight, get healthier, get fitter, those things. And then once you start working with that person, the realization that it's not to discount the goal or the reason they're coming to you for something that's not important, but there's so many more things below the surface, if you know what I mean. And it's, excuse me, it's only when you start, even if it's just taking some sort of action to go into a class, go into working with someone like yourself and work, it kind of can uncover those other things. Because I think there's a risk in anything, of whether it be getting physically active can then become a mask as well, because it's still not addressing potentially the real issue that you're looking at. Someone could be really physically fit and healthy, but still have some challenges that they're maybe not addressing. And the fitness thing is just the next thing that they're kind of holding on to. You said that you moved, or you expanded it to go into the psychology. Were you seeing things like that, and that's what made you want to go deeper into it?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I had a lot of clients, mainly women, because as a woman, I can connect better or easier. I would say easier with women, because I understand, more of even their physical problems, because it's it's just easier to connect. Yeah, I realized quite fast, quite early on, that okay, they actually started telling me their problems without me asking. I think I just have that kind of personality. I'm very empathic, and it works that way. And then I realized it very fast that okay, so again, this is not actually like a nutrition problem, or not really a physical problem in a way that they cannot do that certain movement. It's more like a motivation. But why is there a lack of motivation? Okay, it comes down to something completely else, environment or relationship, or some belief they have about themselves, or a pattern, like a generational pattern that they have, that they learned. And so for the last 3 years now, probably a little bit more than 3 years, I actually start the opposite way. So I'm more into the psychology part, but I also find it very important. So the process. So we start with the mental health part, but I always kind of trying to add or motivate, for the physical part as well, because I really think it's connected. Like you cannot just only focus on one part, because your body also needs to be healthy, as it obviously depends on your situation, your age, and stuff. But whatever you can do, it's good to do for your physical health. But also what you said about the physical health part, if someone is really extremely into training, it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is okay. So it's the body mind connection. So yeah, that's how it started, and that's how I am doing it for the last 3 years, starting with the psychology part.
Yeah, that's interesting that you kind of, in some ways, flip the model a little bit and start with that side of it. I mean, I'm interested more. So, what is there a kind of 2 or 3 key questions that you kind of ask people to kind of that will get themselves thinking?
Yeah, the first question, whatever, because they always tell me what they want, even if it's physical health or something that they want to achieve, even like getting out of something, I always ask why. What's your why? Because that's probably the most important, to be honest. Whatever your why is, is it your inner? Is it an inner answer? Is it really your why you want to do something? Or is it because of a certain expectation? Because then I can tell, okay, I don't think this is really your voice. Let's dive deeper into that. What do you want? Why do you want this? So that's the first question, why? And usually everyone can answer. So even if it's a hard question sometimes, but they can. And then I always ask about just their life. Tell me about your life. How do you live? And this, what's important to you? It's actually a very good question that I ask a lot. What is important in your life? What is important for you? So these would be the three main things to start with.
Yeah. No, it's great, because I think it's a really powerful one when you do start with someone's why, and it reminds me of Simon Sinek in the sense of his thing of it starts with why, and then there's a lady, Amy Rawlinson, who she has a podcast of focus on why, and because like this question of this show, it's the whole thing of getting someone to think slightly differently, and as you said just there, the word of slightly deeper. Do you get? I'm interested when I talk to someone like yourself who does a similar thing to myself. Do people get surprised themselves when they start answering the questions?
Yes. Yeah, it happens a lot. They start talking, and then after that, I actually never thought this through. Nobody really asked me that, and I didn't know I'm going to answer that. So yeah, they get surprised of their own answers sometimes. Yeah.
And I think that's the whole benefit and point of you. I think you were saying, you explaining your stories of the reasons of why going that sort of more psychological perspective first, because you could, in theory, someone comes to you, just give them a program and go via the numbers and go via the sort of, well, we're X weight on this date and you want to be X weight, Y weight on that date, or inches or whatever it is. And of course, that could be delivered in whatever length of time. But it's if they've never had the opportunity, like you just said, to actually think about it and understand it, they'll get to that date, see the numbers have changed, might hit the numbers they wanted, and still feel exactly the same as when they first came to you. So what the next question I want to ask is, then so they've given you their why, what's then the process of, like, how do you go through things like goal setting? Do you do those sorts of things, or what's the sort of process in that? Because that can be a bit sort of, do you do it, do you not do it?
Yeah, but it really depends on the person.
Okay.
There is not one way I'm doing it.
Great.
And also, I'm not gonna do I'm not gonna tell someone what to do. Some people, yes, depending on their situation. Yeah, there are certain situations where it's very clear and there is not like a very, serious situation. In a way that it doesn't influence their health or their mental health. They are just, stuck in trying to set a certain goal, or I'm helping them with that, with steps. But mainly it's not about that. Mainly people who come to me want someone they can talk to. That I'm not going to question them. So I'm always reflecting on what they are saying, not blaming them. If somebody is saying that they have a generational pattern or a habit, or a lot of people have toxic environment, whether if it's work or relationship or family, even just one person around them, that's very bad for their health, for their mental health, or their, daily life. The very important thing for me is just to listen, not blame, and actually make them feel like, yes, they have the right to feel that way. So I always start with that, and it depends on the person, but many times it can take, a few times to talk to them to actually make them feel very secure and feel safe, so we can actually get to the main point, what we can do. So I'm not starting with, okay, so you are in a situation like that, I'm gonna give you this, and then you have to do those steps, and then we are done, and you're gonna be okay for, I don't know, for in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That's not really the way it works. It can take a a longer process, for some people slower, for some people it's easier. It really depends on the personal situation. So yeah, I wish I could give something like that. There is a formula and I can just say, right, in 5 weeks you're gonna be in a different situation and you have to do this and you'll be fine. But it's a lot deeper, because you have to solve very, very deep wounds from the past. That can be trauma, or like if you have to solve a toxic situation, there is no one way to do it.
No, because you mentioned it a couple of times, and obviously you went further into your education about the trauma, the diploma. You said it was a diploma you said you got in.
Yes. Yeah.
So because it's one that I see more often, and it's not something that I'm an expert in any way myself. I haven't done any sort of additional qualification in, but I see it a lot in across, I suppose, people that I look to and talk to as well. But it's because my knowledge is less on it. Tell me more about what was why did you go into studying it firstly?
I always found psychology and human behavior very interesting. So it's part of that area anyway. It's part of human behavior, the way we experience the world around us. And trauma, it's a very heavy, serious word, isn't it? But trauma can be really anything that you experience as a trauma. So, for example, as an adult, or even as a child or an adult, you can experience you travel somewhere and it's very stressful. Something happens on the way, something is delayed. Even that can be a trauma. It really depends on the person. So that's why it's very personal, because someone may be experiencing the same and it's like completely okay for them, Or it can be something more serious. It can be a childhood trauma when someone was abused, or it can be a relationship trauma when someone was in a toxic relationship or abused verbally or mentally or emotionally or physically. One thing is very important, that a lot of people think that emotional or verbal abuse is not trauma. It cannot be trauma. It's not serious. It's actually the same serious, and it causes the same stress levels as any kind of trauma or physical abuse or any kind of abuse. So I kind of had a very deep dive into that in my studies. Because I find it very interesting. It really comes down to human behavior, how we develop and experience things. And also, again, it's connected to mindset. I think that's why it's important to raise the next generation with a flexible mindset, because the more flexible they are and they can be authentic, the less they experience trauma. I mean, if they are abused or an accident happens, yes, of course. But what I mean is, the more flexible you are, the less you experience delays or certain stressful situations to the trauma, because your body keeps that. And that's what I'm actually very interested in, how to release that, from the body, and how to help people to have a more flexible mindset and learn that.
No, it's a really interesting, because I hadn't put them together that way, in a sense of the fact, because as you say, because when you would explain it, because I always think with as you say, the trauma, because even just you said the word, it has that sort of bolded image, doesn't it? Like when you say the word trauma, and I think many people will immediately, myself, it conjures up, as you say, the images of what we think of either abusive or toxic situations, relationships, whether it be, or that suddenness of a traumatic event. So it could be an accident or something. So something quite sort of visceral. It kind of comes up, those sorts of images, whereas it can be much more subtle. But it's all relative as well, as you say, to someone who's, the example you may experience something traumatic. In the eyes of someone else, it wasn't at all. So it's a relative. But I hadn't necessarily linked the idea of having a flexible mindset as a way of managing potentially traumatic experiences. So that's a really different sort of, because it's like, if you are, and I suppose is that when it's really then, because it's the other word, I mean, do you get the word of resilience, I suppose, keeps cropping up and pulling up in sensitive, I think I'm not so sure if, every generation, I suppose, is supposedly less resilient than the previous, we like to put on it. But surely then if we develop that flexible mindset, resilience is an automatic byproduct of it.
Yes. It's again something that I'm trying to answer very shortly, but you just touched the topic that's really important again, the resilience, because you just said that previous generations were more resilient. Yes and no. I mean, in some way, yes, they were, but sometimes I would say if you are too resilient, because I think it can be like when you're resilient in a way where you just keep doing something and you're staying in a situation that's actually killing you physically and mentally. That's not healthy. That's not like resilience in a way that it should be, you know? Yeah. That just came to my mind when you said that. Yeah, so with the trauma, it's a very heavy word. But as I said, it has two sides of it. So, of course, there is the trauma where it's really traumatic. So it's an accident, or you lose someone, or you're abused, or you know someone who has been abused, and that can be traumatic for the other person as well. So they're of course, it has a heavy, serious meaning of it. But yes, as I said, I think resilience, flexibility in your thinking, it helps in certain ways when it's very stressful. And so it's your body, is the way your body is storing the stress that can be as a trauma, and then it comes up, it triggers. So you get different situations that triggers it, even if it's subtle. But if you are more flexible with your mindset and you practice that and you learn it, you're gonna find yourself in a situation where you're like, it's okay, I can actually solve this, you know?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that it's that sort of self-agency, that you say that you people have that sort of belief that they can resolve something or bounce back from something. And I think, going back to that word of resilience again, because it is an interesting one. And again, the way you put it there, just saying, and I don't necessarily agree that any generation previous was more resilient or less resilient. I just think it's a bit of a, I think I remember seeing a program or 3 years ago when they read some sort of sayings or phrases about the younger generation, but it was written 200-300 years ago. But it was as if it could have been the same thing now. So I think everyone has that sort of that same saying about any younger generation. But the point you made there, I think I want to echo it, is that resilience isn't staying in a situation for the sake of it, just to say that you were resilient. Yes. As you say, that's almost ludicrous thing to do, just to for the sake of it. As you say, it's not resilient. It's definitely not having boundaries. It's just, what's the achievement? Do you see then, because you've mentioned a few times, as a sense of generational, is that where you can see that because a parent or grandparent or whatever stayed the course regardless, that has an impact on the people you're working with?
Yes, definitely. The more people I talk to and the more people I meet, not just as a client base, but in general, I see that the previous generations, there are two reasons. They think it's very important to keep going even if it's killing you. One is because they didn't have a choice, or they felt like they didn't have a choice. Sometimes there are circumstances. If you see a war situation, where you. So there were so many things that happened to those generations. So there's that one side. But on the other hand, the kind of having this mindset because of that, that's also like a traumatic response. When someone is resilient, when they don't have to be, and they can change their mind and they can do things differently, they have, even if you give them options, but it's a trauma response when they think, no, I have to keep going because I want to look strong. Because if I change my mind, I'm not. What will people think about me? So expectations from family, from society. There's so many expectations around us. So that's the not healthy thing to stay resilient. The healthy resilience is when you actually do something because it's good for you or your environment, which depends on what you're doing. But if it's not good for you anymore, and it's not even a challenge, but it's something that it's having a negative impact on you, but you keep doing it, that's not good. So you should be able to develop this kind of mindset where okay, this is actually not benefiting me or anything around me. I'm not growing in this. And I can change it, or I don't have to do it any longer. But people are really afraid to do that because of expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think then as well, it kind of then it's all tying into the first answer you gave in relation to again about that authenticity as well, isn't it? And being authentic, because it kind of then the way you said it then, people have almost can create that persona about themselves, the image of themselves, and not necessarily really being who they want to be, but because they've been this sort of, for want of a better word, character for so long, if they actually did or said or wanted to be, took the actions that they really wanted to do, as you say, it's that sort of one, the perception or judgment of others, but maybe also of themselves. And because it can be, I don't know if you found it. That whole, I was chatting to another guest there recently, the whole concept or the idea of identity and how we wrap it up into ourselves, and thinking, and maybe sometimes confusing authenticity and identity, because if we've created this sort of persona about ourselves or character about ourselves, do we think we're being, again, authentic, but it's because it's the way we're being looked at or perceived. So there's a bit of a, do you find there's resistance from, when you're working with people to kind of like step out of that sort of character or whatever word that they've created?
Yes, it's a very good point of view. Yeah, there is resistance. Yeah, there's always
Mm,
resistance. Most of the time there
yeah,
is. Yeah.
sure.
And it's very interesting what you said. I like that because it's true that authenticity and what did you say? Identity. Yeah.
Identity, yeah.
They are not the same, and
Mm,
there can be differences. And identity is something that you can create for yourself, but most of the time you don't realize that it's not only what you're creating for yourself. It's what
mm,
your environment as well and the expectations are creating. So you kind of make it as it's your own. And so
yeah.
that's why it's holding you back from being authentic, because you are afraid, okay, if I'm stepping out of this or if I'm changing, that's not going to be me. And so you hear a lot. I hear that a lot from people when they say, well, yeah, but that's just him, or that's just me. I'm like, no, that's actually not
Mm,
you, or it's not only that you. So,
yes.
there are different parts of you. And are you sure it's your own voice? That's another good question to ask. Is it really you saying that? Because we have so many monologues in our head that's going on.
Yeah.
And many times we don't realize this is actually not my voice, it's not my thought. It's something that I'm used to and was expected from me, or a pattern, but it's not really what I want from myself, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think yeah, because it's a really sort of the point you said that you've just that almost picking up when someone says that almost really short throwaway sentence. Oh, that's just
Uh-huh.
such and so. Oh, that's just, and they're not really putting that much weight on it, trying to almost dismiss it, as if it's that question of like, well, this is that sort of, well, that's just the way it's always been. That sort of very sort of just want to go past as quickly past that as possible, but that without them realizing that's the real thing that you need to kind of
Uh-huh.
go deeper on, because it's bypassing so much that they're trying to, maybe for good reasons, ignore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, these kind of words and sentences, when you hear them, it's always been that way. It's okay, it's just me, or it's just him, or just that's the way it is, that's the way I am. Anything like that, you have to stop there and just have a look into it a lot more.
Mm.
Why is it there?
Yeah, and I think it's really important, because I want, if people are watching or listening to this, if that's a phrase that you're kind of hearing yourself say,
Uh-huh.
or because in some ways it's a way of, I'm just thinking out loud now. It's like it's a way of excusing behavior that really isn't acceptable. Would I be right in saying that?
Yes, but I would say also it's a survival tactic that's very
Okay.
natural. It's very natural from our brain. So our brain is trying
Yeah.
to keep us safe in our
Okay.
situations, and
Yes.
that's a survival tactic from our brain when we say, yeah, this is just the way it is, because then we kind of feel more safe.
Okay. Yeah. That's yeah. So then I can see then, and this is where again from the work that you've done in relation to trauma, it's so important, because this is what the fact that you've done the further study on it, and this is why I don't personally talk about it much, because it's so much deeper to be able to help and work with people through that it's, because there's a danger, I'm sure if you open up that world to someone, that they need then, or they require someone to help them through that process. It can't be, it's a very, what I would write and think, it's quite a delicate and, you know, challenging road for that person to sort of go down.
Yes, but it's very necessary.
Yeah,
So
sure.
it's very necessary to open up that one.
Mm,
And it's not easy to start that, but it's only the start. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy anyway, but the start
yep.
is definitely not easy. But from then, it gets easier. It gets
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
easier because even the heaviness of that wound, whatever it is, as I said, it can be subtle or it can be more serious.
yeah.
But it doesn't matter how serious or subtle it is. It depends on really what matters is how the person experiencing it.
Mm,
So even if it's very subtle, I never say, oh no, that's not serious. No, it is very serious for the
yeah.
person because it's how they are experiencing it. But it's very
Mm,
necessary to open it because I always see, even after 2 or 3 sessions, that they feel lighter. You
yeah,
know, they
yeah,
even
yeah,
say it because all these things that you store, you can actually see it on the face, see it on the eyes,
yeah.
on your in your energy. So
Yes.
as soon as you open it and you talk about it and you actually answer the questions, even for yourself, you know, I always
Mm,
give questions as a, like, it sounds silly, homework. It's not like a homework, but you know, like a
yeah, yeah, yeah.
test to do, um, to answer questions at home for yourself. And
Mm,
the questions can be hard to answer, you know, and that's why
yeah.
it takes sometimes a week to answer those questions. But then after that, I always get the feedback that, you know what, it was hard to answer, but I feel so much lighter. I have more
Mm,
energy because I answered that. I said it, I wrote it down.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that, no, that's a really important thing to sort of, to, in some ways, close off that loop. Is it's the outcome as well, though, isn't it? It's the, you know, for all of the work and that, it's, and you said earlier, it's definitely not the same for every, the path isn't the same for every person you work with, every person or client or whatever it is, but the, where they want to get to for themselves. And you say, the seeing the difference between the first time you meet them and maybe whatever the third, fourth, or the last time you see them. I was talking to another person about this, and it's an interesting when you can see, literally see they hear it in their voice, but you can see the physical change, just in whether it be in their body, their eyes, and that. That's always an interesting thing to witness, I'm sure.
Yes, or even in their voice. I see it a
Okay.
lot in the voice, the way they speak. They can be more assertive, more confident,
Mm, yes.
or even the tone of the voice can change.
Yes.
They can talk a bit louder. They don't feel like they have to hide and have to talk, you know, like, no, I wouldn't say whispering, but you know, like when they don't feel like they can find their own voice and talk. So that I
Yeah.
always see that too after a few sessions, even if it's something about, you know, some clients want to like set goals and they have a problem with
Mm,
goal setting, and then it comes down to they have a problem with goal setting most of the time because they have this fear that's holding them back, that what would people think,
mm,
or that's not what they learned from their family to
mm,
actually have a goal like that. So it comes down to that again. So it's very different. Everyone has like a different goal, so not everyone
mm.
comes with trauma or
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
open that. But to be honest, everything that's a kind of a block, even if it's
Yeah.
setting a goal or making a decision, it comes from
Mm,
something is blocking you to do that, and it's usually from fear of something. And most of the time it comes down to fear of breaking a habit or a pattern
mm.
or someone's expectation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So much in it. I want to make sure as well, like, because we've spoken so much about obviously the psychology side of it that you work with people, but you mentioned it, the whole thing of body and mind, you know, going back to that. So when you work with people, is it a case of, you know, is it very, you do this sort of when you're talking through, you know, and it could be doing trauma or not, or you're talking through sort of beliefs and things like that and coaching people, do you then go into a sort of prescriptive type of for fitness plans, or do you, you know, do you nutrition, do you, when you do the whole body mind, what else would you do when you work with a client?
Yeah. So again, depending on the person and the situation, but I always advise people um, or start talking about how they can practically improve their energy and their mood because that's important too, like physically improving that while we're dealing with a certain situation. And that's why I talk to people a lot. I talk to my clients and I ask them what they like, because I'm not going to force anyone to go for a 5-mile run when they don't like running. Although it's good to step out of your comfort zone, but we are not starting with that, because that's just going to make you even more stressed, and we don't want to cause stress. So what I do is I know what they like. I know where they are at, health-wise, mentally, physically. So I say, okay, do some stretching. Do you want me to give you some tips how to do that, or send you some? Or if you want to do some yoga, or just walk, have a I don't know, 3-mile walk, and get back to me after that. How did your walk go? So it really depends on the person. But yes, after a while, when someone is improving, or if they are in actually a good condition, I give I wouldn't say that I give like specific personal plans at the moment. I used to. It's just a lot, to do that as well. But I definitely help them to find what they can do, what they like doing, what can improve, because physical activity improves your energy and your hormones, your hormonal balance. That helps as well, again. And it opens up your energy points in your body that we have. And also the nutrition part, same thing. So I help with that in a way that we talk about it after a while during the sessions. I know how they live. I ask them more information, and I help them to achieve. For example, if they're very stressed, I advise certain foods to avoid. And so that can lower the stress in kind of that way.
No, I love that, because again, it's I do personally, I think that approach with working someone is a much more, and it goes back to that word again you said the whole way through this is about flexibility, because again, you can go back to that much more prescriptive, here's a 12-week training program, do this, do that, do the other. But again, if that person doesn't like it, hates it, whatever, the motivation and stress is going to reduce, versus the sort of enabling them to come up with something, highlighting the benefits for sure, because the benefits are undisputed in relation to physical activity. You can't knock it. Too much research in the sense of the positivity of physical exercise and good nutrition. But I'd agree with you in a sense of, because I was in that space before where I did personal training with people, and it was a kind of a progressive sort of place and gym I was working in. You could argue I still found it too restrictive. It was, again, we're basing it on these numbers being X at this date and Y at that date, and eating this and that, and just ticking things off. Whereas, like, I think I don't know for yourself, but I think when I've worked with people, or if I ask people, even we go back to the nutrition, what do you think is a healthy diet? People know the answers. Like it's not blaming because of, again, environment, circumstances, but we do know what is an arguably healthier way to eat than an unhealthy way to eat. But again, go back to those surface level things. It doesn't necessarily be trauma. It could be environment, culture. I remember, I'm digressing, but I remember when I really started to shift and sort of mind my own health a bit better and get into physical activity, the negative comments that you would get from people that you would know quite well because you were doing something different, whether it be friends or family, it was quite a sort of taken aback. So there's that societal pressure to stay in a certain way as well. And it's enabling like real people to kind of think about themselves and get them to do it versus telling them. Yes. That makes sense.
Yeah, you're right. Again, expectations and the fear of what other people think. And it's very natural. So we cannot blame people, because we live in a society, and of course it's very natural, to think about other people and how they see us, and that's completely fine. Again, that comes down to learning about ourselves. And I really think that any kind of self-development, even if it's a workshop about goal setting, or joining a group where you talk about life and goals, and anything that's really self-developing, it's very beneficial, and it's so available for
Yes.
everyone. It's so great. You can find it anywhere. You can join online. You can just watch YouTube videos about it if it's coming from a good source. So it's great. But yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people, when they start changing their habits, their environment, especially their close environment, can really be kind of, negative or trying to sabotage. It's because it's really hard for people around you to accept that you are changing, especially if they are afraid of their own changing and they don't want to, then they're kind of used to you the way you were before.
Yeah.
And even if it comes from love and not really like something negative, it can seem like it's negative, and it is for you, yes.
Yeah.
So, but it's always at the beginning. If you keep doing it and you keep, pushing, they either, there's two ways always. They either gonna be okay with that and they actually accept it, or they might start their own changes as well.
Yeah.
Or they're just gonna stay the same way and they're gonna be negative. But then I think those kind of people, even if it's family members, I don't believe that obligation to stay around people, even if it's family or friends. If someone doesn't want you to grow in long term, not just at the start when they are scared of your change, you can minimize the contact. Maybe you cannot cut contact, but you have to minimize contact with people. And that's again, if we come back to the authenticity and the flexible mindset, because you cannot always keep the same people if you want to grow. It's growing. You're going to change people. Not everyone is going to like it. So you might end up with a different group of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's absolutely true. And I think that's where it takes to say that sort of bravery of someone to keep making those decisions and kind of realizing that sometimes that whatever your friendship groups, family, work environment, even potentially real close relationships have to change. And again, I think it goes back to something you said earlier in a different context, that it's like, it's not easy. Some of this stuff is really, really hard. And so I'm not, saying this sort of flippantly or as if it's just a click of the fingers. It's hard to do, and I'm sure you've experienced this from yourself and then with people you work with, is that it's worth it. That's, it's as hard as it can be to go through all these changes and potentially either lose or reduce relationships in different circumstances. To have that authenticity, to have that flexibility is absolutely worth it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's very hard. There's no question about it. It's especially for someone who finds it hard to change, and not because there's anything wrong with them. It's just because that's the way they grew up, maybe, or it's their circumstances. So it's nothing about blaming anyone about it, but it's really hard for people to do that, and I think it's for everyone on different levels, but it's worth it, because once you start doing that, you will find the right people around you. You will just see how you care less about what people think after a while.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I think that's really the beauty of it, that, it might get you sometimes a little bit, but mostly it's like, okay, whatever. Okay, that doesn't matter,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's worth it.
I love it. Absolutely. This is a question I love to ask all of my guests as they come on, Zsanett, which is, I have a love and a admiration of quotes or phrases. I think they can be very powerful and can be quite applicable. So are there any quotes or phrases that are important to you?
Oh, this is a hard question. And you know why it's hard? Because of the English. Because I don't know if I can say it, or if I know. I won't be able to answer it like that. But if you give me one, it might remind me of one that I actually know in English.
So, I mean, what you've talked about, a lot of the times, the one that come to mind when you were talking, in a sense, about the authenticity and the sort of the fear of judgment of others, I suppose, worry what other people say. It reminded me of the one of comparison is the thief of joy.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, there is one. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's sort of, because so much, and even literally what we were just talking about, of the fearing of what other people will say. Because if we go into that, I find that when we talk about that fear of others or the fear of judgment, you're really going, well, they're going to, who are they? The fearing is that because I'm comparing essentially what I'm doing to someone else. So, or thinking about it. So we can, and the reason I like that one so much as well is specifically in words of the thief of joy is literally taking it from you. And if you're constantly in that sort of worried sort of perspective, so that's the one that came to mind when you were talking throughout here.
Yes, I like that. Now a few came to my mind now that you said that, so that
Yeah.
was a help for me.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I like the one. I'm not sure if I'm saying it completely correctly. Whether you think you can or can't, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is one
Love
like
it.
that. I love
Yeah.
that because I think it's also very true. I like the one where it's better to be alone than in bad company because I think that's very,
Yeah.
very, very strong and it's so true.
Yeah.
So at the one you said, I love that because it's really true for society that everyone's comparing
Yes.
themselves to someone, whether if it's because of our looks and we have to look perfect and be perfect and act perfect, and then you don't really know what's going on in anyone's life.
Yeah.
So if you
Yes.
compare it, you're never gonna be really yourself and happy.
Yeah, yeah. I love that one you just said there. It's better to be alone than in bad company. That's really, really good because, and I think that because I hadn't heard that one before. So that's a really cool one because it's making me think there because it goes back to again what we were just talking about in sense of when you change, excuse me, when you change and you might have to change the people around you because they're not liking the change that you're becoming. And it's the realization that if you stay within that group and that you can feel it when this is point. So I was thinking myself, when you go back into that group after you've made the changes, you're kind of going, oh, this doesn't feel right. And it's that realization, actually, no, I'm not better in this situation. I'm better out of it. So that's a really powerful one.
Yes, yeah, I love that one, and I find it very important in my life
Yeah.
to live like that and practice that. And it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that if there is a disagreement, you have to leave any kind
Yeah.
of situation or relationship, but it's really about can I be myself?
Yes.
Can I grow? Can I learn? Is it good both ways? You know?
Yes.
And if it's dragging your energy, it's if
Mm.
someone or some people are bringing you down constantly, not just once, but it like keeps happening, and it's just really not good for you. You have to change the people around you,
Yeah.
or step out and
100%.
be alone for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Who do you think, Janet, have been the most influential people in your life?
I'm gonna go personal with this one.
Yeah.
I would say my best friend and my mom. I think I learned my flexible mindset and my love for travel and learning new cultures and about people from my mom because she's like that, and I traveled a lot when I was a child with her. Yeah, it's just something that I really appreciate. You know, that I wasn't
Yeah.
raised in a way that okay, this is only the culture and the language and the country, and just stay at this and never explore. No, it was the complete opposite. I was very
Love
early
it.
introduced to different cultures and language. And
Yeah.
also, yeah, my best friend, because I know her for so long. It goes
Yeah.
back very long, and she's very different. She's the opposite of me in a lot of things, but she really taught me how to love someone, even when you're very, very different in a lot of situations and making decisions in a different way, and maybe having different interests, but
Yes.
still having the empathy and the compassion to accept it and not kind of trying
Yeah.
to hold the other person back. So this she's a very good example for that, when you don't have to block and hold someone back even if you don't want to do the same thing or don't want to live that way.
Yeah. That's very cool. No, love that. Thank you so much, Janet. Well, it's been an amazing conversation and loved chatting to you, Janet. I do have one more question before I let you go, and that is what's important for your future?
Oh, well, for my future, definitely just for being happy.
Mm.
And not all the time, because you cannot be happy all the time, but
Yeah, yeah.
being in a state of mind where I can be happy and relaxed, and having good connections around me, my
Mm.
loved ones around me, and health.
Yeah.
These very basic things. I
Yeah.
honestly, and also I love my work, but to be honest, that's the basic thing for me, to be healthy, to have my loved ones healthy, and good connections around me, and that would be the
Love it.
most important. Yeah.
Yeah, no, love it. Absolutely. No. And I think there's something really beautiful in the simplicity. Sometimes that's all we kind of need as a guide. So no, love it. As I said, Zsanett, it's been wonderful to chat to you, and I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. We are going to put in the show notes where people can follow and connect with you online. But if you'd like to give a shout out now, where people can do that.
Yeah, so I just started a new YouTube channel. It's very new, so you can be my first few
Yeah.
subscribers, and it's Fit and Mind. So that would be where you can actually
Yep.
follow me. Also on Instagram, Fit and Mind Coaching. Although I would say YouTube is gonna be where I be mostly active, and
Brilliant.
you can book through my email address as well.
Awesome. As I say, I have all those links to the YouTube channel and to your Instagram will be in the show notes. So make sure you do click and follow Zsanett. So once again, thank you so much for chatting to me today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to What's Important to You. If you enjoyed this episode, follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if it resonated, share it with someone who might need it too. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment or ask a question, and let's keep the conversation going. I'm James Dean, and I'll be back soon with another real conversation to help you reconnect with what truly matters. Until then, take care and stay curious.